How could Orochimaru still use ninjutsu even though his arms were sealed by the Reaper Death Seal? We see Orochimaru using several different ninjutsu, even though he wasn't supposed to after his fight against Hiruzen, and eventually he even uses his arms to fight with taijutsu and other things. So what gives, and was the Reaper Death Seal useless? Did Hiruzen sacrifice his life for nothing at all? Is this a massive plot hole in the Naruto series? Let's answer those questions, shall we? The first thing we have to do is to analyze the Reaper Death Seal a little bit closer. When Hiruzen used that jutsu against Orochimaru in their fight, Hiruzen's original intention was to drag Orochimaru's soul completely out of his body, killing him in the process and sealing it in the belly of the Reaper. It is a very powerful jutsu. The only problem is that the user also gives his own soul to the Reaper, so you die in the process. But because Hiruzen was old and not in his prime, he didn't have as much chakra as he used to, he was unable to pull Orochimaru's soul completely out. So he decided to just cut Orochimaru's arms out, in soul form I guess you could say. And it is very clear when it happens, because the Grim Reaper literally cuts Orochimaru's soul arms from the rest of his soul, sealing them inside his own belly, and therefore his arms got purple and rotten, and it was extremely painful and a terrible situation for Orochimaru. One interesting fact in the Naruto world is that souls resemble the appearance of a human body. You can literally see the soul of the user being held by the Grim Reaper whenever the Reaper Death Seal Jutsu is activated, and this interesting quirk of the Naruto world enables Hiruzen to seal just Orochimaru's arms. But that's the thing, it was the soul that was sealed, not Orochimaru's physical arms and not Orochimaru's chakra. And the thing is, whenever Hiruzen is going to seal Orochimaru's arms, and Orochimaru is scared because, oh no, I'm gonna lose all my jutsu, and Hiruzen even says, yeah, you're gonna lose all your jutsus, man, it's gonna be horrible for you. That wasn't really true, right? Because Orochimaru is still able to use jutsus one arc later when he fights Jiraiya and Tsunade in the Way Deadlock. And the reason why he can perform jutsus afterwards is because it was his soul that was sealed. Orochimaru still has chakra, and his arms are still there. Well, he cannot use them anymore because they're just flopping there. Whenever he's fighting against Jiraiya, his arms are hanging in there as Orochimaru attacks with his tongue and also stretching his neck, that weird snaky way of his. But the fundamental thing is that none of those jutsus require hand signs. So Orochimaru technically does not need his arms to perform them. Obviously, he's not at his full power when he's fighting without arms, but he is still capable and dangerous. As I said, he uses his long tongue to wrap it around people, toss them around. What he did to Jiraiya in that arc, like slamming him into the ground with his tongue, was pretty nasty. He's also able to use snakes that he spits from his mouth, and even use the Kusanagi sword when those snakes leave his mouth to pierce other people. He did that to Tsunade several times in that arc. He cuts her time and time again as she protects Naruto. So Hiruzen's thought there was not correct. He didn't take away Orochimaru's ninjutsu entirely. He only took away jutsus that require hand signs, and this is a little bit weird because several jutsus that used to require hand signs in Naruto Part 1 start to not require hand signs anymore in Naruto Shippuden. It kind of depends on what Kishimoto feels like, it seems. A good example is the Chidori/Raikiri. In Naruto Part 1, both Kakashi and Sasuke had to weave hand signs to use Chidori, but then in Naruto Shippuden, most of the time they simply ignite Chidori in their hands. So did they learn to cast Chidori without hand signs? Is that something Orochimaru could do with his other jutsus that do require hand signs so that he could circumvent the nerf on his arms? Well, maybe not. Maybe there are a few jutsus that you simply cannot use them without weaving hand signs. And even the Chidori itself, there are a few instances in Naruto Part 1 that, well, they don't use hand signs, such as when Kakashi is protecting Sasuke from Orochimaru whenever Kakashi is sealing the curse mark, and also when Sasuke sees Itachi for the first time in that hotel room and ignites a Chidori and rushes Itachi essentially. They do not use hand signs in those situations, so it seems like the Chidori is a jutsu that the hand signs are optional. And there are several other jutsus that work the same way, to be fair. But we can infer here that Orochimaru's main jutsus do require hand signs, and there is no way around them. Jutsus like the Edo Tensei, which is probably Orochimaru's most powerful jutsu, and he uses it against Hiruzen, but never used it again until he gets his arms back in the war arc. So okay, a piece of Orochimaru's soul got sealed in the belly of the Reaper. His chakra is still intact, his arms, although they're not intact, are still there, but because it's his soul that was sealed, it seems like the quote-unquote damage caused by the Reaper Death Seal was much more spiritual than physical, even though there are physical manifestations. And where I'm trying to get here is that Orochimaru thought Tsunade would be able to heal his arms completely. If you don't remember, Orochimaru's entire goal in the Search for Tsunade arc was to get to Tsunade so that she could bring his ninjutsu back. And he made a very enticing offer to her that he would bring Gon and Awaki back with his Edo Tensei if she healed his arms, and that's why Tsunade was so tempted. And Tsunade also thought she would be capable of healing Orochimaru's arms if she accepted the deal. But would Tsunade really be able to heal his arms? Well, when it comes to the physical ailments that Orochimaru was suffering from, the purple arms that were rotting away pretty much, probably yes, Tsunade is the best healer in the world, and she could probably restore the function on Orochimaru's arms. However, when it comes to Orochimaru's soul, I don't see a way of Tsunade putting Orochimaru's soul back into his arms. The only way we know of that the Reaper Death Seal can be circumvented is shown in the War Arc whenever Orochimaru uses the Reaper Death Seal mask. Literally has to cut his belly open, releasing the souls out of the Reaper's own belly because he kind of takes the form of the Reaper when he wears the mask. And if it was anybody else other than Orochimaru in that situation, the person would have died because you have to slash your own belly, but Orochimaru can swap bodies. So because Orochimaru was suffering from a soul ailment alongside the physical ailment, it wouldn't really be possible for Tsunade to heal him entirely. Sure, she could heal the pain Orochimaru had, she could even make Orochimaru's arms function properly again, but if he were to weave hand signs, the jutsu wouldn't work, because the piece of Orochimaru's soul that corresponds to his arms wouldn't be attached to his body. But then there's something even more interesting that happens to Orochimaru's arms, because when he returns in Naruto Shippuden during the Tenchi Bridge arc, Orochimaru seems almost 100%. His arms look completely fine, he's using them to fight against the Four Tails version 2 Naruto. He even punches Naruto really hard. I mean, the punch itself doesn't really work because Naruto counterattacks and cuts Orochimaru in half, but he was using his arms pretty freely there and he didn't seem to be in pain. Yes, in the end of the fight against the Four Tails, Orochimaru was extremely tired and he even figured that his body wouldn't last much longer and that he needed to trade bodies again, but during the fight, he looked pretty good. He was even using the freaking Rashumon summonings, a triple Rashumon to stop the Bijudama. So how was he using those summons? Because back in Naruto Part 1, whenever Orochimaru was doing those massive snake summons after his arms were sealed, it wasn't actually Orochimaru using the jutsu. It was Kabuto weaving the hand size and employing the chakra to summon those snakes, but using Orochimaru's blood to make the summon happen. But Kabuto was not fighting alongside Orochimaru when he fought against Four Tails Naruto. So what the hell was going on there? Because his arms were floppy as hell in the three-way deadlock, and now they seem pretty good. Well, what happened was essentially Orochimaru swapping bodies. Well, during the Sasuke retrieval arc, Orochimaru gets himself a new body. And I get the feeling many people forget about that scene, maybe because so many things are happening at the same time during the Sasuke retrieval arc, and also because some people tend to overlook that arc, even though it's the best arc in the series. The way he chooses his new body is pretty insane. He releases hundreds of prisoners in his hideout and tells the prisoners, yeah, only one of you is getting out of here, so just do a battle royale here real quick because I want to find out who's the strongest. And so they do, and there is a massacre in Orochimaru's hideout of his own prisoners, and that one dude with green hair comes out on top. Orochimaru comes to him and says, yeah man, I'm using your body now. Is there any wish that you want me to fulfill? He's even kinda nice in that regard. A quick flash of humanity in Orochimaru, and the guy says, can you take care of my clan, make sure they go free? Orochimaru says yes, and we don't know if he fulfilled that promise, but anyway, he gets the man's body with that macabre ritual of his. That's why in the end of the Sasuke retrieval arc, Orochimaru is filled with those bandages and looks pretty weird. It's because he's getting accustomed to his new body. And in the end of the Four Tails fight, the body is starting to fail, and Orochimaru needed his new body, which was supposed to be Sasuke. But because he got that new body, it was as though his arms were healed, at least the physical part. So Orochimaru could use his arms to fight, could use his arms to do stuff, could use his arms to wipe himself, but he still couldn't use hand signs, and therefore he couldn't use several jutsus, including the Edo Tensei. I imagine the healing Tsunade could provide to Orochimaru's arms would be something very similar to this. And obviously, because Orochimaru has a new body now and his arms are healed, he doesn't feel the terrible pain, and his arms weren't rotten and bleeding anymore. I mean, remember that shower scene? It's heavily censored in the anime, but in the manga, you can see some pretty gruesome stuff in his arms there. But how could Orochimaru summon the Rashumon, though? Because it was Kabuto doing the summoning of the snakes before. Well, if you take a closer look, Orochimaru does not weave hand signs to summon the Rashumon. And it's not just Orochimaru. Every time the Rashumon is used, it doesn't require hand signs. When Sakon and Ukon use it against Kiba in Naruto Part 1, they only have to bit their fingers and they summon the Rashomon just by touching their palms on the ground. Orochimaru does exactly the same thing to stop the Bijudama and summon the triple Rashomon, and Hashirama does exactly the same thing in his fight against Madara, summoning the quintuple Rashomon against him when Madara infused a massive tail beast bomb with a Susanoo sword to divert its trajectory. You only need your own blood and to touch the ground, essentially. So this is a jutsu Orochimaru wouldn't be able to do with his previous arms before the swapping of the bodies, but now, because he doesn't require hand signs, he is capable of. So if we're being real here, the two things Orochimaru is unable to do is to summon his massive snakes, because that requires hand signs and he needs somebody else to summon them for him. And he cannot use the Edo Tensei Jutsu because that also requires hand signs, and because it's a complicated jutsu, difficult to master, other people can't really summon them for him. Even though Kabuto learned the jutsu later on, Orochimaru was already quote-unquote dead. And it's very consistent because every time we see somebody using the Edo Tensei Jutsu, they have to clap their hands in order for the coffins to rise. So Orochimaru wouldn't be able to do the jutsu. And to be honest, Orochimaru is still powerful without the Edo Tensei, but the Edo Tensei is by far the most dangerous thing he had in his arsenal, so the nerf was valid from Hiruzen's perspective, because if Orochimaru had access to the Edo Tensei after the invasion of the Leaf Village, things would have gone terribly. Just imagine if Orochimaru managed to master the Edo Tensei like Kabuto does for the War Arc, and brings an entire army of extremely powerful Edo Tensei that are not nerfed, including Madara. The Akatsuki would have been the lesser issue in that situation. And yes, eventually Orochimaru gets his arms back in the war, and the way it happens is really out of nowhere. It's not very well written, or established even. It's a plot device that they stumble upon. Oh! Look, we found the Uzumaki Reaper Death Seal mask. We can use that to unseal the souls in the belly of the Reaper. And that will bring Orochimaru's arms back, which will enable him to cast the Edo Tensei on the first 4 Hokage, which also happen to be sealed inside the belly of the Reaper. So you take care of 2 issues at once, because obviously Kishimoto needed the Hokage to be present, or at least he really wanted them to, and I like the presence of the Hokage in the war. It's just that the execution of them being brought back is very clumsy. A lot of people bring this up, but why didn't Orochimaru tell the Sound 4 when they invaded the Leaf Village to take Sasuke back to him to just grab the mask with him? Well, obviously you can say they didn't know about it. Orochimaru didn't have the knowledge of the mask, at least in that point of the story, even though he probably should have, because it's something he would want to know about and do a lot of research on. But it's a plot device Kishimoto used to bring the Hokage back. It is what it is. The important thing for this video is that it makes sense for Orochimaru to be able to use his arms and some types of jutsu even after his arms were sealed, because of the nature of the sealing, and because Orochimaru can swap bodies and heal the physical part of his arms, but not the soul. The soul, well, you need to get the mask of the Reaper Death Seal and unseal your soul. Like this video if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel and ring those notifications, that helps me out a lot. Watch this other cool video right here for more Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching.